Good morning, Rebecka Vigus, the writer whisperer here in sunny South Central Kentucky. It's gonna get to 51 degrees today, guys. It's kind of like summer heat wave here. So I'm pretty excited about that. We are going to Joel Saltzman's If You Can Talk, You Can Write. We're moving into part 2, which is writing versus talking on paper. Up till now, he's had us talking on paper. Okay, this says write one paragraph as badly as possible. For their first homework assignment, I asked my students to write one paragraph as badly as possible. Immediately, hands shoot up all over the room. What do you mean? How do you want us to make it bad? However you want. As it turns out, most students do quite well at writing badly, especially when they put their minds to it. A favorite ploy is to use a lot of big, complicated words, putting them into long, complicated sentences, droning on mechanically. They'll make each sentence as dull and stiff as possible. As one student wrote, in view of the fact, and specifically because life is fair, everything should work out perfectly for everyone without needless and unwarranted efforts to make things equitable beyond the presently existing status quo. Therefore, allow us to disallow any cantankerous, petulant, complaining, or vociferous, boisterous outbursts on the part of the bilbous, hard drinking lower class. Do I make myself clear? I hope that is not clear to you. Hardly. Ironically, when not trying to write badly, many beginners fall into the same sort of trap. It's as if they say to themselves, because it's writing, I have to make it serious, complicated, impressive sounding, and so on. They don't really believe this, but they don't disbelieve it either. So, what is good writing? It's based on the way we talk, not the way we're supposed to write. Remember, writing is talking on paper. When it's not talking, it's writing. And when it's writing, it's bad. If it sounds like writing, I rewrite. Elmore Leonard. So now you have a reading exercise. This is your prompt. Find a good paragraph. Choose a favorite book or author. And he says even a good magazine will do, but there aren't a lot of good magazines out there anymore, guys. And find one paragraph you particularly admire. Read it over and ask yourself, is this an example of complicated, highfalutin language? Or does the writer use simple, everyday language, writing more or less the way someone talks? Then he says, thank you. You've proved my point. Say precisely what you want to say as though you were talking directly to a person. Write the way you talk. Revolutionary words? Maybe so, but they first appeared back in 1924 in Lillian Eichler's book of etiquette. in a second on letter writing, in a section on letter writing. I can't even read this morning. 1924. They were wearing straw hats, doing the Charleston, and some of the best advice in town was write as you talk. Seems like some ideas never go out of style. Okay. Let me give you an example of someone who writes. And he's an award-winning writer. James Michener. He spends so much time on the little details. It drives me nuts. He could get lost in the details. His details tend to distract from his storyline. He's worried about being authentic. And so he writes. It's serious writing. He wrote South Pacific, I believe. Became a major motion picture. I have trouble getting through Michener. I get lost in the details. Don't lose your reader in the details. Write like you talk. Write like you talk. Write like you're telling me the story. Don't get caught up in stuff that's not important. Don't get caught up in the mundane. You don't need big words to impress me. I went to high school with a young man who was forever using big words. Most of the time, he used them correctly. But he wasn't impressive to anyone. And I think he had a very lonely life. I know he later married. I worked with his wife for a brief time during a Christmas rush. I didn't keep in touch with him after high school. I didn't keep in touch with his wife. And yet she was a very nice person. He was a very nice person. But you don't need to use huge words to impress me. You don't need to make yourself stand out by using big words. You really and truly don't. And if you think you do, you are writing the formal essay that they told you in school, 5 paragraphs. You have to have the introduction and the premise all in the first paragraph. Then you need at least 3, 4 paragraphs that are going to back up your premise with all the big words and all the formal stuff. And then you need a conclusion to draw your paper together. And no one's going to care about it except the teacher who's going to grade it. You don't want your book to be that way. I work very hard to create characters that you will see, you could picture yourself seeing as you walk down the street. Some of them might even be people you want to know. Others, not so much. I had a character in River's Edge, and everything that you knew about him said this is a bad guy until you got to meet him and you found out he wasn't such a bad guy after all. And yeah, he'd gotten into scrapes as a teen, but he turned his life around because it wasn't what he wanted for himself. And as a result, he helped solve a cold case by bringing down a bad cop. Yeah, he helped. And he won the girl of his dreams 19 years later. 19 years to win the girl of his, or 16 years later to win the girl of his dreams. It is amazing how characters come together and interact and create themselves differently. Because they do. They truly do. If your character doesn't change in some way during the writing of your book, there's a problem. A real problem. So, find something to read and figure out whether they are writing or talking. Let me know what you find out. Happy writing.